All right, so today I have designed this specific presentation really, I really
Mm.
going through and thinking about what it means to me as an executive and an entrepreneur and someone who started this business on January 20th. It will be 5 years, which goes very quickly. So those of you who know when you start your own projects or your own business, it's an incredible journey. And as well, this is not necessarily geared only toward entrepreneurs, but rather most, I would say, I haven't taken the exact numbers, but most of the guests that we work with at the Buena Vida and have over the last 5 years, the age group is generally 45 to 75. Most people are far, mid to deep into their careers. Some are taking career changes, many executives, nurses, doctors, lawyers. It's definitely not what I imagined at the beginning, which I thought, I'm not sure who's going to come to a mushroom retreat in Mexico. I'm not sure if it's going to be, people interested in spirituality or people interested in plant medicine, but really, we have a very high percentage of guests who've never taken psilocybin in their life or any other type of psychedelic. So that's very common. And we designed the retreat for the Western mind. And so, what I was thinking of in this, what are all the stories I've heard over the years from executives? What do they deal with on a day to day basis? And what can really be changed? And how can psilocybin be a part of that? So that's what we're gonna go through today. Real quickly, we're going to go over quickly the biggest concerns that a lot of us find in the workplace. We have some facts about psilocybin, the indisputable facts about what it does for the brain, what the results have been from some of the research studies over the last 8 to 10 years. We have a few anecdotes from, again, some of you that have been to retreats and some of the feedback that we have gotten anecdotally over the years. And then we have quite a bit of time for our Q&A, including the questions that many of you submitted already on the form, which is going to be fantastic. This is a picture of one of our facilitators, Anna. All right, so let's see. We have a picture here that is counteracting the pain points. This is at the end of a retreat, some of our guests. Um, Let me know. You can raise your hand when you hear the one that calls out to you the most. Work-life balance, right? What does that even mean? Is my work my life? Is there a balance? High stress levels. That was the number one response that all of you guys gave to the survey that you were looking for is stress, right? Stress and anxiety, absolutely. Decision making, this can be huge for entrepreneurs. Talent acquisition and retention. And this goes along with getting along with your employees, communicating with your boss, how to have interpersonal relationships in the work environment, which can be different than other environments. And some of the other two that everyone reported were the competition, of course, so that can lead to the stress, right? And then technology and transformation. So that's keeping up with new things, learning new tools, learning new systems. A lot of us feel I'm 41 years old and I don't consider myself, I'm middle aged. And even now, I'm starting to see my nieces and nephews and cousins just eons ahead of me in forms of technology and what they can do. So that can be, most of these things lead back to stress, which is an important piece to remember. So, what have we seen from the research of psilocybin? And there's going to be a big list of sources. I'll send you guys the sources after this, but this is what we've noticed are the short and long term effects that are reported from mainly people who take higher doses of mushrooms. So that's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 grams of mushrooms, as opposed to a microdose, which is subperceptual. It is generally 1/10 to 2/10 of a gram or so. And I'm not going to read every single one of these. We hear about this all the time when people go home. Creativity in their day to day life. And that just doesn't mean, hey, I started painting or I started dancing. Creativity just in problem solving day to day, little things, little ways, different way to work, different way of doing something that really affected your life. So creativity, a lot of times we think like, oh, this is just me starting some new hobby, but creativity can be in every moment of your life and it can really lead to a lot more daily satisfaction. Stress reduction. I believe we'll go over this in a little bit, like what I believe after working with over 1,000 people, what causes this stress reduction. It can be simply from the effects on the brain of the psilocybin, especially in the first 2 to 3 weeks after a large dose. But the long term stress reduction, I think, comes from the ability to make changes long term. So the decision making, we hear this all the time. People just feel like their yes is their yes and their no is their no after these retreats. Like the clarity, I think clarity is a beautiful intention to have. Like, I just want to, when I say yes, it's yes. And I say no, it's no. And I mean it and I go with it. That is a lot of freedom. And many of us that, are overthinkers or, can him and haw on decision making, that can be exhausting. Our emotional intelligence. I think a lot of us know people who are not very emotionally intelligent, right? But being in tune with how we're feeling, why we're feeling it, how it moves through the body, naming emotions. Most humans can only name 3 emotions: happy, sad, and angry. Meanwhile, there are thousands. Problem solving skills. This goes along with, I think, the decision making. And the bottom one there I want to touch on is the overcoming limited beliefs. So, for those of you, any of you that have done any personal work know that limiting beliefs are, I mean, man, they are just the crux of everything when we want to change, right? And the brain, unfortunately, is just a pattern making machine. And our brain wants to project onto reality any pattern that we have had. Now, what that can mean is that in early childhood development, age 0 to 7, when we get into patterns that were either toxic or unproductive or unstable, our brain will seek that out sometimes for the rest of our lives, just because we were programmed during that age to look for patterns. So, overcoming these belief systems, what's needed is the ability for the brain to be more open, right? The openness, the ability for the brain to make new patterns. There are some sources. We're not going to read through those. I will send those after in the presentation. All right, so this is my favorite part, guys. We're going to get a little bit sciencey and a little bit nerdy right here for just a moment, because we are working right now with Imperial College London. And we have one of our research scientists who is specifically studying the long-term differences between clinical studies with psilocybin, or clinical when you go into a clinic to take a dose of psilocybin, versus something like a retreat, a longer term, maybe 5 to 7 days with a group, and what are going to be the long-term differences. So she tells me that the research right now, the most admired and accepted theory, again, it's just a hypothesis at this point, of what psychedelics are doing in the brain is called the entropic brain theory. Entropy. So another word for this is anarchy. And I love that idea. So without going too deep into it, our brain and all the different parts of our brain usually have walls up. So they have, imagine a bunch of little cities in a neighborhood. And inside these cities, there's a 40-foot wall, and the little people inside the cities can only know what's going on within their city. During a high dose of psilocybin in particular, I'm not speaking to other psychedelics because I only know mainly about psilocybin. Those walls of the little cities are temporarily put down, and there is more anarchy in the brain. And so there is more entropy, or chaos is another word for entropy. Now, what this looks like, as you can see in the picture here, is that little pieces, for example, like in the purple going to the yellow, that purple is, these are representing different parts of the brain. So the different parts of the brain usually only communicate very infrequently on a day-to-day basis. And there's a lot of top-down control. So under the influence of psilocybin, you can start to see, for example, the purple reaching into all of these other parts of the brain. And this is why psilocybin not only is physiologically extremely safe, it's one of the safest drugs on the planet, but it is also pro-brain health. And at the Buena Vida, we have had guests that have brain tumors, that have recovering from cancer. We've had 82-year-olds, we've had 16-year-olds. It is an incredibly, in my opinion, and I know that research is soon going to show this, a very physiologically safe medicine. It's a very pro brain medicine. And the theory is that because the brain is able to temporarily have anarchy, right? Able to grasp and move energy through all of these different parts of the brain during those 4 or 5 hours of your experience. This is what leads to, oh, we're going back here, the creativity, the stress reduction, your decision making, your emotional intelligence. This is what leads to these outcomes. However, it's not just the mushrooms themselves. Oh, no, 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 no. You got to have the right container around it. So, moving from our brain theory and our facts, we're just going to cover a few short little pieces here from some guests, which I think I chose these because we kind of hear some of these pieces a lot from guests. As someone who had been in therapy for a while and was very self-aware of my patterns, I started hitting a wall when it came to healing because I was unable to access feelings in my body. Interesting. Feelings in my body. And she goes on to the more, but she was able to access those parts of herself or trauma that had been buried for most of my life and that I was walking around with. We hear this many, many times from previous guests that they've been in therapy, they've had the SSRIs, they've been to the other places, they've had the gurus, they've read the books, and especially talk therapy, they're like, it wasn't really doing much as far as changing my actual day-to-day life. So psilocybin can be a wonderful, I say, addition. It is not going to replace traditional talk therapy. It's not necessarily going to replace your therapist or your psychiatrist, but it is a fantastic tool to access pieces that you cannot access through cognitive therapy. You cannot access through talking, through narrativization, through just using your cognitive and your conscious mind. And then we have from Brian, I've been living with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and OCD for the most of my adult life. And what he received was a lot of healing and calm. I realized there's a difference between healing and fixing, but that I was never broken to begin with. It was just fucking beautiful. And I can say that because I don't have a boss. I love this at the bottom. He said, this is coming from a skeptical New Englander too. So you know that my bullshit-o-meter is always on high alert. Everything and everyone was as genuine as can be. It's the real deal, authentic and life affirming. So moving on here, of course, I am Amanda Schendel. I own the Buena Vida psilocybin retreat. So I'm going to tell you, of course, about the benefits of a retreat. There are now quite a few in the world. You don't have to choose ours. We'll tell you kind of, I know that M had a question about some of the differences between our retreat and some other ones. But as you can see here, when you take 5, 6, 7 days completely away from your life to go into these deep places, I just know for a fact, and I haven't been able to prove it yet, but it's going to be different than taking mushrooms at home or going on a hike taking mushrooms, or even a clinical setting where you're going in for a few hours and then going home. And the main reasons are that you have the time, the space, the guidance, the holding, and then everything in the container around the experience, not just the mushrooms themselves. So we hear this all the time. It's the number one piece of feedback. People say the community and the support that I received was nothing that I expected. I thought I was just kind of doing this on my own and I was going to eat these mushrooms and then everything was going to kind of change. But really, it was the connections. So the connections to the other guests, to nature, back to myself, to my ancestry, to my history. Mushrooms are, the fruiting body of the mycelium network, and the mycelium network is the largest living biological system on this entire planet that connects everything. So it only makes sense that mushrooms, as a medicine, as a plant medicine or a fungi medicine, show us where we've lost connection. In addition, preparation and integration, which most experts say integration of your experience is about 80% of the work. It's vitally important. I tell everyone this, you can have the best psychedelic experience of your life. You met God, everything was love, you're connected to everyone. And that experience will only last maybe 2 to 3 months maximum. I promise you that. You might have the memory forever because the memories stay with you. But if you don't have any sort of integrative practices, ways to ground this into yourself and your day to day experience when you get home, it's just going to be kind of a cool thing you did one time. And, you can tell a story about it, but it won't be something that really starts to shift and change into your life and into your work life, as well as the time. Everybody needs that time to process. So we had some questions about legality and decriminalization, especially in California. I won't go too deep into this because I really want to get to the Q&A, but as of right now in the United States, Oregon, Denver, Oakland, and Washington, D.C. are the places that it's either legal or decriminalized to consume or to have psilocybin mushrooms. There's different amounts in each city. There's different legality around how you do it, but those are the main places. There are retreat centers, at least that I know of, in Jamaica, Mexico, Costa Rica. Those are kind of the main places that I've seen retreat centers, some in Europe too, some in the Netherlands and Portugal. The next way is entheogenic churches. Entheogenic, does anybody know what that means? I'm not going to have you raise your hand. So entheogenic basically means access to God, or a way of getting in access to the divine. So an entheogenic church is a church that uses a substance, whether that's ayahuasca, peyote in the Native American church, psilocybin, that you have some sort of a sacrament in your church that gives you access to the divine, which is protected. And of course, the underground. Just go to a random coffee shop and start talking to somebody about mushrooms, and maybe you'll find some. I don't recommend that, but that's where you can maybe find some. And last but not least, I wanted to actually, this is the first time I've officially announced this to anyone but past guests, is that in April, just a few months, 2024, we are going to be right here where I'm at right now, officially opening the Buena Vida Sanctuary, which is an entheogenic church, one of California's first psilocybin churches. We are working on all of the legality and the safety and how exactly it's going to work for everyone right now. We have an amazing team of lawyers that have started 60 other churches in the United States, protected by the Constitution as our right to religious freedom. And we will be offering wellness gatherings that actually don't involve psychedelics, just all kinds of different modalities, breath work and celebrations and things that we find helpful, as well as weekend retreats with psilocybin and other special events. So that's something I'm very much looking forward to. We've had a few underground retreats with some past guests over the last year, just testing some things out, and they've all been fantastic. All right, guys. So before we get into our questions, that was a lot of information. It was a lot of cognitive taking things in here. And so we're going to have an experience together before we get into our questions. Sound good? If you are safe, so if you're not driving, if you're somewhere that you are able to eventually close your eyes, we're going to close our eyes and we're going to, just for about 45 seconds, we're going to experience a slight change of our consciousness. So psilocybin mushrooms, as well as things like alcohol, cannabis, many, many other things on this planet, what they're doing is they're changing your awareness, your consciousness, your ability to understand in some way. Alcohol, for example, is changing it through basically poisoning your body, and your body's reacting to that poison and making you feel a different way. Psilocybin, though many people somehow still believe this, is not at all a poison. It's not mushrooms that poison your body and you're reacting. That's absolutely a myth. But my favorite and most powerful modality that I use probably, well, every single day for sure, but even in longer stints, I would say about 2 to 3 times a week, is breath work. And your breath is one of the best medicines on this planet because it's always accessible to you. It is free. You can pretty much do it anywhere. And for those of you that have done longer forms of breath work, you know it can completely change your state. It can induce the exact same brainwave states as a psilocybin journey, especially when done 45 minutes to an hour. And all you're doing is just changing the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your body. And we're going to do a little experiment right now with our breath. So I'm going to teach you my favorite breath for reducing anxiety and stress, which is what everyone responded. Most people want. And I find that so many of us spend time, most of our lives, in our sympathetic state. If you've never, this is a term for the fight, flight, fawn, and freeze, right? We're always running away from something, avoiding something, fighting something. And it's so difficult for us to learn new things, make decisions, to be a great boss or a great employee, to actively be a part of our work when our brain state is in that fight, flight, or freeze. Everything becomes very myopic. Your ability to take in information, you literally, like, your pupils dilate, everything becomes smaller because your body believes you're in danger. And most of us, I would say, are in this state a huge percentage of our lives. So, part of what we can begin to do that I think you can do without any drugs and without any psilocybin is you can begin to breathe and do other certain tools throughout your day that put you in a parasympathetic state, that put you in rest and digest. I'm safe, everything's calm. And that's what we're going to be doing right now. So, this is the fastest, easiest breath you can do anywhere. I do it on airplanes, especially after being in an airport. I do it in any time that I'm out driving and before I arrive somewhere if I'm feeling stressed. And this is proven by Andrew Huberman. I don't know if anyone knows who Andrew Huberman is. He's a neuroscientist at Stanford, very popular neuroscientist that takes all of the data and says, here's how you do this. And so this breath is going to be 2 inhales through our nose. And I'll show you, don't worry, before we do it. 2 inhales through the nose, and then we're going to do a big exhale out through the mouth. So 2 big pieces of this are the second inhale. I don't remember the part of the brain because I'm not a scientist, but if you just did 1 inhale, that's going to feel good, but it's not doing the same calming effect to the brain. So the second inhale is at the top of the first. So you do 1 big one, and then right there's another one. And that second inhale is very important. On the exhale, it needs to be all of the air out. And if you can, make some sort of a vibrating sound with your throat. So it's a, or like a sigh, right? Just like we do when we're tired and we come home from work, the work day's over. And our body knows to do that because our vocal cords are vibrating the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the largest nerve in our body. It's responsible for putting us in different states. So the vagus nerve runs down our ear, down our back. And when we do an exhale, like this, it vibrates that nerve and signals to the body, I am calm. So I find that over the years, people have a hard time making a sound on an exhale. I don't know if we're just afraid someone's going to hear us, or if it's weird, or if it's too hippie. But if you can, I challenge you to make some sort of a vibration or some sort of a sigh when you do the exhale, because that's going to add to this. So I'll give you an example, and then we're going to begin together. So I'll give you an example of both pieces, the 2 inhales and the deep exhale, letting all air out. So it looks like this. Wait till all the air is out, and then that last one there. So big exhale. I don't want you to do a little tiny, like a big, big, big exhale of all of your air before you begin that inhale again. Sound good? So go ahead and close your eyes down, shut your eyes down. Let's have this experience together. It's the end of the day. Don't do the breath just yet. Let's just take a moment. Let's take about 15 seconds with our eyes closed. Closing down the eyes in the yogic traditions shuts down 60% of our energy is lost through our eyes, just taking in information. So when we close our eyes, it's a signal to our body. Nothing else is going on out here. And it's a very easy way to say, I'm just here. I'm here in myself. I'm here with myself. So you can feel your feet on the ground, or you can feel your butt in your seat. Feel the gravity that's holding you here on this planet. It's the end of the day, hopefully for most of us. So we're going to be doing 6 of these breaths together. Nice short practice. And right before we begin, I want you to take a really quick scan of your body. How does it feel right now? How do your shoulders feel? I know for me, I'm kind of breathing shallow right now. I'm feeling a little bit tired from the end of the day, a little bit droopy. So just take a note of your state. And then we're going to begin the breath together. You can follow me or you can do your own 6 in whatever pattern feels good to you. But again, it's in through the nose, out through the mouth, and we'll begin the big inhale. And the second one, and release. When you're ready, another one, inhale. Another one, and release. Number 3, inhale, release. All the air out before you do it again. It's forceful inhales. Release, going into number 5. Nice big inhale. And another little one. And release. And make this one your biggest breath of your entire day, the biggest inhale you possibly can. And then another one. And a big exhale. Return to your normal breath. Keep your eyes shut. Notice the changes. I love to say, even if it's a 1% change. Just increase the amount of oxygen in our bloodstream. We've signaled to the vagus nerve, we are calm, we are safe. You may feel a little bit more presence in your body. I can usually take deeper inhales after I do this practice. So slowly, we're going to come back. Sometimes when you open your eyes, things look a little bit different. Whew. Amazing. Once you get this down, you guys, this is 30 to 45 seconds. It's incredible. I notice when I'm really stressed, I don't want to do it because my body's addicted to stress. And it's like, if you do that, you're not going to be stressed anymore. So don't do that breath. So you can raise your hand in your head or on the screen if you're addicted to stress, if stress feels really good and makes you feel really important. I know that that's a lot of people who I work with who say like, I'm so busy and I'm so addicted to stress. And it's like, well, you must be getting something out of it, right? So we're going to go through a few of these.
Pressure is a privilege.
Yeah, go ahead. What was that, Matthew?
Pressure is a privilege.
Ooh, that is true. Absolutely. Thank you guys for doing that with me. So real quickly, let's just spend about 5 or 6 minutes on the questions that you guys submitted. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again so you can see those questions. All right. I'm not going to spend too much time on the different strains. In my opinion, like there's just so much information available about the different strains of mushrooms. In this case, someone asked about APE, which is albino penis envy. Mammoths, I'm not even really familiar with. We particularly work occasionally with penis envy and occasionally, or sorry, most of the time with golden teacher mushrooms, which to me have the richest history They're teachers. They literally teach. They're a beautiful mushroom that a lot of people can, especially if it's like your first time or first few times, it's a good way to be able to handle it, but they're also very powerful. The next question, what are the risks of microdosing interacting with alcohol or THC? So again, psilocybin, in my opinion, I'm not a doctor, but I've done a lot of research and I know a lot of the indications and contraindications of microdosing. Microdosing is such a small amount of psilocybin that it's not really going to interact much with alcohol. Occasionally mushrooms are a little bit dehydrating. Alcohol can also be dehydrating. I could see that being a danger. I would not want to mix a higher dose of mushrooms with alcohol just because it's one, the alcohol is suppressing parts of the brain that you want to come online. It's also getting rid of memories and you want to be able to remember your experience. So I don't believe there's too many physiological interactions. THC and mushrooms classically, and this comes from kind of the underground of my youth, they go well together, in my opinion. THC can reactivate psilocybin. So if you already have some in your system, and then your journey is coming to an end, and you smoke THC or you have THC, it might reactivate the effects of psilocybin, but there are not any specific physiological contraindications of those two together. How common are these applications? I don't know. You're going to have to ask people who take mushrooms a lot. We talked a little about the decrim in California. It was really unfortunate that a few months back that the governor said no to a bill that all of us thought was actually really well written, very safe. The attitudes are still changing on that, and that is why we have chosen to start a church, because we believe that it is our right as human beings on this planet to sit with this sacrament. Those of you that have either been to a retreat or taken psilocybin know that it does help you access the divine, absolutely. Oh, I have a raised hand from Christian. Let me see if I can see that. Christian, do you have a question specifically on what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, yeah. Hi, Amanda. I was curious about the THC response, and I don't know if I caught this, but are you referring to if you're microdosing? I'm curious about like if you're microdosing and you use THC at night before bed, something like that. Or are you talking about like a macro dose and then do THC? Can you kind of go into that?
Yes. So if you are truly microdosing, which I want to have a little warning about this, in the community and with people I talk to, they will sometimes say, "Hey, I did a microdose last night and I went to a concert." And they'll say it was a gram of mushrooms. That is not a microdose. A microdose, the number one piece of a definition of a microdose is it's subperceptual, meaning you do not perceive any changes in your vision, any changes in your body, any changes in your emotions. So a microdose has to be very, very, very small. And with that and THC, again, in my opinion, and this is just from experience and people I've talked with, it's not from research. I don't believe that having THC at night or THC to go to bed is really going to, it's not going to diminish the effects of the microdosing, of what it's doing in the brain and how it's making those connections and making you more aware. There is some research that long-term consistent daily THC use, like on short-term memory and certain things, is having a negative effect. So that's just more what I've been reading, but I don't think that there's not contraindications between a true microdose and THC. So moving on, I know that someone
Thank
specific.
you.
Yeah, thank you. The difference between Buena Vida and micro meditations. Well, I know firsthand about this because I have done 2 retreats as a facilitator and a leader with micro meditations. It was quite a long time ago, back in 2017. But I really do know the difference in the philosophy, in the workshops, and the overall, I guess you could say, style of the retreats, right? Which everyone just needs to find a style that kind of matches what they're looking for. Micro meditations is very much, um, and then they even say this a lot on their website. They're just like, we are modern, we are not shamanic. We don't, apply any of the kind of ancestral traditions. It's just, I believe they still do it this way, where the mushrooms are encapsulated and you take some capsules and everyone kind of spreads out in a grass area. There's facilitators kind of around and you just kind of go and do your own journey. The Buena Vida, really, we are really deeply rooted in ancestral traditions from all over the world, not necessarily specifically only from Mexico, although we do really honor the traditions in Mexico. And we really believe that having a container that we call a ceremony, whereas a space where we are all going through this experience together. Everyone has their eye mask in their own bed and their own space, like you're off in your own land with the mushrooms. However, the safety and the guidance that we are able to give you as leaders is done mainly with music, a lot of live music, singing, drumming, rattling, humming, some silence, different instrument, different traditions from all over the world, from our backgrounds. And this is so important to me because this is how I experience ceremony, and it has made a huge, huge difference in my life as far as um, feeling really disconnected from myself and from my culture and from the world, and realizing that a ceremony or a ritual is, in my opinion, woven into the DNA of humanity. And we need these containers and these spaces that mark a point in time. And as well, we really focus a lot at Buena Vida on somatics. So it's kind of a popular word going around the internet right now, somatic therapy. And we've noticed over the years that if you spend too much time with psychedelics, putting the experience of your ceremony back into your mind, right? So trying to figure it all out, or trying to, A plus B equals C, and trying to just intellectualize the process. That's what we do every day, all day as Westerners. And the mushrooms specifically really work with your body. A lot of people, a lot of therapists I know believe that the body is the subconscious mind expressed. So what we hear over and over again is like, I can't believe how much it was working on my body. I can't believe how many things were in my body. So on a cellular level, you probably will feel at some point that the mushroom medicine isn't just showing you visuals or telling you a story, but it's working deeply within the cells of your body. So somatics are what we just did, using the breath to reconnect the mind and the body together, doing longer term breath work to change our body state, change our brainwave state so that we can access old hidden traumas and things that just live in parts of our body. Experiencing, expressing, and creativity without just making a narrative story from the mind. And I think that this is the main thing. I'm not positive exactly what Myco-Meditations offers, but that's a little bit about the Buena Vida. We also just have a very specific way of holding the space in a lot of unconditional love and non-judgment. And what that means is that anything that you say, anything that you feel, it's all extremely welcome. So after a ceremony, some people might say, oh my gosh, this was so life-changing, and I met my ancestors, and I feel so connected, and I just can't believe how beautiful it was. And someone next to you might say, I'm extremely disappointed. I'm actually really angry. I'm really angry. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. And for the whole group, and especially the leaders, to allow those two opinions, those two feelings to exist is an unbelievable gift. It's an unbelievable gift that we don't get day to day. So it's just something that me and my team, mainly the women on my team, really love to hold the space in the way of the divine feminine, receivership, love, compassion, gentleness. And so when we're going through these really, really sometimes extremely challenging places, it's necessary, I believe, to have that kind, compassionate, sweet gentleness around you, that most of us, to be honest, don't experience all that often. I know that I don't. How many large companies, if any, are you aware that tolerate the use of psilocybin? So I did a little research on this. It's real. I mean, there's no way for me to answer this. I like that this question said, the use of psilocybin in their employees' free time. To me, that would imply that I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. That would imply that your employer would be doing some sort of drug testing, right? I am completely unaware, and I've talked to a lot of people, that psilocybin would really show up on a drug test of any type. It also is out of your body in about 12 hours. I'm not sure how long it would show up on a drug test if they specifically were testing for that. And it really would depend on the company, right? How progressive the company is, how much they're into wellness and understand all of the research that's coming out about this. The state that you're in is going to have a huge impact on that. It's 50-50 at our retreat. Some people say like, hey, I'm not telling anybody, my family or my employer or anyone. And other people are like, you know what, I'm open about this. And it's obviously been shown, there's a lot of research now that this is showing, positive effects for mental health. So that is a tough question for me to answer, quite honestly. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm really interested to see from our guests and from all of you guys out here what the attitudes are and how this is being spoken about, if at all in the workplace, if there's still a lot of the negative stigma that's, unfortunately been around the world for the last 50 years, or if, the articles and the positive news and the things that are coming out are really starting to potentially change that. Dosage, where are they produced? How long is the journey? Fantastic question. Our dosing is on a case-by-case basis. We generally start, if we have 2 ceremonies, we start everyone around 1.5 to 2 grams of mushrooms, which is kind of a standard macro dose, I would say. And then each person has a one-on-one consultation and a group meeting the next day. We do not tell anyone during the retreat how many grams of mushrooms they're taking. This is one of my favorite things we've ever done, because everyone starts comparing to each other, and you had 2.5 and I had 2.7, and why didn't I have the journey that you had? So we tell you the grams of mushrooms you took after you leave the retreat. But we are very capable and able to give you, some people need higher, some people need the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 grams. I would say most stay around 3.5 throughout the experience. But we do also redose after an hour. So after that first dose of tea, let's say you begin with around 2, 1.5, 2 grams. If we come around and we kind of have a little chat with you and you're really not feeling it and you're ready for some more, we can and will have a second dose. So both of those things, the consultation and the redosing, really help people find kind of where their comfortable places without going too big too soon. And again, some people stay at 2.5. Some people I've given, I guess, 12 grams, which would be considered extremely high, but we've all been on different medications and we have different brain chemistry and different body chemistry. And so we're prepared to handle any of that. And the last question, the process of using them for navigating challenges and boosting productivity. This is a great question. I would say microdosing is going to be fabulous for this. And this is what we're starting to see some research on microdosing over time. So if you're going to start a microdosing protocol, stay with it for at least a month, because the changes are going to be a little bit slower. And most of the changes that I have heard seem to be the most prominent are patience, that kind of boost of creativity, connectivity, the ability to put pieces together in a quicker way, to kind of almost like move through your day with an expanded ability. And this is not just psilocybin, this is also functional mushrooms as well. Nutritional functional mushrooms can do this. Many people report like just more like a pause between the ability to respond between a stressful event or a partner saying something to you and your ability to pause and respond, which is extremely powerful for stress, right? Because stress comes from our inability to be in our environment in a healthy way, which is why there's positive stress, like, working on our muscles or going to the gym, and there's negative stress. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there, you guys, because I've been talking for a long time and I want to hear from you. I want to hear things that are still kind of ruminating around in your mind, questions you have from this. So let's go ahead and get into our gallery. You can either just raise your physical hand, you can raise your little Zoom hand, any way you want to do it. Go right ahead. Ryan, go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I had a question, but I also could I speak just real quickly to the question about productivity? I've I've done, since the retreat, I've done 2 macro dosing sessions since then, and what I've noticed is in the 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks that follow that, I've noticed my ability to take action with things, like being able to visualize what's going on, see answers, and then come out of that and go, wow, I need to take action in order to incorporate those things into my life, right? And so from a productivity on moving towards goals and personal growth, that it's been amazing for me. But so kind of speaking to that productivity question, I'm curious, does I'm surprised that we don't hear more about psilocybin and Eastern medicine. Is there any connections there? I mean, you mentioned the retreats that are all kind of here in the West, Central America area, and it seems to be more of a Mexican tradition, from Mexico. But have you seen anything related to Eastern medicine?
Functional mushrooms, so lion's mane, turkey tail, reishi, a lot of those mushrooms are in a lot of Eastern, as I am not by any means an expert or even educated too much on Eastern medicine, but from what I know from people who are, Ayurveda and acupuncture and different Chinese medicine, that mushrooms and fungi are always involved. I would be surprised if psilocybin was not involved. Even though we here in the West know more about the Mexican traditions, psilocybin grows on every continent, and so, in my opinion, and of the research I've done, most ancient cultures have cave paintings and artwork and many, many things that show psilocybin type mushrooms as a gateway to expanded consciousness, to higher states, to religious states. I'm just not positive. I haven't done a lot of research. That's one of my long-term dreams, is actually to do like a 6-month documentary of like going around the world and speaking with experts in every place of like, you know, what are the traditions of psilocybin religiously or for health or for functionality in every place, because it's kind of hidden. Yeah. It's not, I'm not too aware of that.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So what Ryan said,
Yeah.
which is he said 2 to 3 weeks. So that is the window. We now know that there is on that anarchic brain or the entropic brain, there's the walls coming down with the connections. There's a 2 to 3 week window after you take a large dose of psilocybin where those walls are still down. So we really focus our integration on those 2 to 3 weeks. The changes you want to make, the mindset changes you want to make, the decisions. If you have big decisions coming up, there's a really beautiful window after either a large dose or a retreat type experience where if you want to make those decisions, you want to make those changes, you want to quit that job, you want to do those things, do it in those 2 weeks, because that's when you're experiencing the most effects and the most ease of being able to make those especially mindset changes, right? Like, I have some powerful ways of, if you have these same 10 thoughts every day and you want to change them to something a little bit different, do that in those first 2 weeks for sure. So thanks for that, Ryan. I appreciate that. Anyone else want to unmute or raise their hand? Got a question? We've got a few more minutes here. If you need to leave, you can go, but I'm going to stick around. Hey, Miss Laura, you can unmute. Go ahead. Okay.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you know what? I'm battling a new that doesn't want to cooperate, but I'll just talk. So I was the one, obviously, who asked the question about, any companies who tolerate psilocybin or any such psychedelics in their employees. But I was wondering if you also had any insight as to how many states, or maybe it's ubiquitous at this point, I don't know. Was I on mute that whole time?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. How many states actually are allowing guided through medical channels, guided, psychedelic experiences, with a licensed therapist or what have you? Because that suddenly occurs to me as one pathway into sort of a more mainstream corporate space, than just being like, hey, these are going to make you more creative or whatever. it might be a really like solid first step. So how ubiquitous is sort of these like clinical guided experiences?
That's a wonderful question. As far as I know, Oregon is the only state that is allowing that, and that they have centers set up, and there's a lot of legislation around what those can look like and what different therapists need to be there. So Oregon is I believe, the only state that is starting to regulate that. I do know that there are some companies that are really trying to advocate for this to be covered by insurance at some point. So that's in the early stages of that psilocybin therapy or psychedelic therapy, MDMA, ketamine, those different things to be covered under like the mental health or even physical health container with insurance. The biggest thing I think we're fighting is that, we have this archaic system in the federal government that scheduled drugs, 50, 60 years ago, and hasn't once taken a look at rescheduling the drugs, because psilocybin remains Schedule 1, which means absolutely no benefit, highly addictive. Just nonsense. Like, everyone knows that's nonsense. But until we get someone who's going to reschedule these medicines, drugs, whatever you want to call them, that may continue to be a challenge, I think, because a lot of companies, especially larger companies, will say, hey, federal regulations, right? They're going to stick with that. Whereas, we have the same thing as cannabis, right? The states, right? It's happened with Oregon too. The state says it's legal, the federal doesn't, and then they do like this. So what we're going to be doing as the Buena Vida Sanctuary, as well as I know other churches do this as well, is that when you donate and become a member of the church, we send you a card. I even have one from another church right now that legally protects you for sitting with what you consider your sacrament. So the card says, like, I consider psilocybin my religious sacrament, and that is protected under the religious use of the Constitution. So it's not a, get out of jail free and just go around and be doing this anywhere you want, but to me, it's like another piece. I love having that in my wallet even, and then this is from a different church in the US. It's not even from mine yet.
Do you know her?
I'm sorry?
It's happening now, but I think it's on the tail end.
Yes. So Elena, I think if you just joined us, we're on the tail end. We're doing some questions and answers. This is going to be, I'm going to upload this to YouTube, the presentation. I'm also going to send out the presentation, so you'll get a lot of those pieces. And I plan on doing something like this once a week. I think it's really powerful and potent, and I learn a lot from all of you and a lot from your questions. But yeah, Laura, to finish up on that, the safest way, I believe right now, anywhere in the US, if you're going to be engaging with psilocybin, is to carry some sort of a card that really at least states, like, this is a part of my religious beliefs, that this is a sacrament I take that I believe is good for me. And again, it's not protection against anything. Don't be silly, do things in very, very safe containers and safe ways. But until the insurance companies and we have an uphill battle with pharma, right? Like, that's the thing with psilocybin. It's easy to produce. It's inexpensive. It's not really going to make pharma a lot of money. So, I can see some advocates on that side not being all that excited about it. All right, guys, we got time. Let's see, like 2 more questions.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Laura. Great question. We'll take a few more here. I have some time. No problem. Anything you guys want to ask, I'm open for it. And if not, we may have to say goodbye. Anyone else have any questions about your work, about your life, your emotional health, your physical health? This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I will.
Hi, everybody. I'm jumping in on the last wagon here.
Hi, Elena.
Just got the link, and you might have covered this. Apologies if that's the case. I'm just curious. Yeah, how do you navigate holding events with psilocybin in the current environment, the legislative environment? Like, what are the ways you protect yourself? You might have covered. If that's the case, let me know. But yeah, I would love to know that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Elena, after the presentation, which kind of goes into the different states and cities in the US where it's either decriminalized or legal. The way that we navigate is in Mexico, it's protected culturally. And so we work with local elders and local medicine people to make sure that the way that we are holding space and holding ceremony is in the traditional way. And so there in Mexico, even though it's not quote unquote completely legal, it is protected, and it's protected for the guests and certain amounts of psilocybin. So we found ways to be in compliance with the law in Mexico. In the United States, we are beginning a church in California in April of, it's actually, it's already begun, but we're going to start doing events in April of this year. And that's going to be, that's protected by the religious use of the US Constitution. So the same way that there have been many, I think there's hundreds of entheogenic or substance sacrament related churches in the US. Some are, kind of wilder than others. Like, in the news, there's certain churches in different places that have a dispensary set up for cannabis and psilocybin. That is not what we're going to be doing. That's not my mission. Like, I like when we serve it and we do it in an extremely safe container. For me, this isn't about just giving people a substance and so they can do it whenever. It's really about the community, the setting, the integration, preparing, and like having the complete container, because any people, I don't think that mushrooms are a panacea, just like humans have been looking for since the dawn of time, right? The next thing they're going to take, or the tea they're going to drink, or the magic guru that's going to fix them. It's not that way. They're a very powerful tool, but just like a hammer can, nail a nail, it can hit a nail, or you can hit you in the head. Like it can be a dangerous tool as well. And you always really need to be around people you trust, people that are educated, that can hold space for you. And that's what we will be offering at our church here in Joshua Tree, California. And Christian, I think I saw, if you still have a question, you can unmute there, or if
Yeah, I was just, yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, I was curious. I saw that you had offered something called an expansion retreat. And I don't know if you talked about this earlier, but I was curious about what the difference was to a healing retreat, how that worked out, if you plan to do any more in the future like that.
Great question. We changed the word expansion to small group because that was really what people loved about them. And we just announced one today. I'm not sure if my assistant has put it on the website yet, for the end of February. So the two types of retreat we have are healing and small group, or expansion. We used to call them expansion. And the small group retreats are limited to 8 people, whereas the healing can be up to 14 or 15. Honestly, the healing retreats lately have been around like 10-ish or so, usually. But the small group retreats, the biggest difference is there's more preparation with our leadership team. There's more of us, more leaders like per person. So at a small group retreat, we'll usually have 3 to 4 facilitators and usually around 6 guests. So you get quite a bit more time with us. We spend more time with you one-on-one. So me and the leaders, we have all kinds of different modalities and trainings that we've practiced over the year, and can do kind of more targeted and specific, not only integration, but just actually like healing sessions with you. And those are the biggest benefits. There's also a longer period of integration after at the small group retreats. So that is the big difference. You get to like hang out with me more, which apparently is a good thing according to some people. And I'm always
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, I'm not always at the healing retreats, but I'm always at the small group retreats. And so over the years, it feels weird to say, but I think some people, through my videos or just through different things I've done, they want to work with me specifically. And I suppose I do have the most experience out of my entire team. So that's the difference. And so check probably either tonight or tomorrow. We're going to have those dates up. I believe it's February 20th or the 25th. Down in Mexico, and we're getting, we're not having quite as many retreats in Mexico. I think there's a huge interest in California for obvious reasons. We're still I love Mexico. I love that area. I love everything about it. So we're still always gonna have retreats down there. But as we start to see the interest in the retreats will be shorter here in Joshua Tree. They're gonna be Thursday through Sunday, but they still have 2 ceremonies. So it's, come in Thursday night, we start to prepare, have dinner together, get ready. Friday and Saturday, we will have ceremonies. with maybe a hike in the park or some, I don't know if any of you guys have been to the high desert in California. It's absolutely beautiful here, really private. And then, so Saturday morning-ish earlier is we'll do our second ceremony. So there's a lot of time to relax and integrate and share with each other. And then Sunday morning, have breakfast, a little bit of more integration. And those have been what we've done about 5 times this last year, kind of just only with past guests. They've been really powerful, and they're not quite as long of a container as a retreat in Mexico, but they still offer, you know, time away from your regular life, as it were. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for
Awesome. Thank you.
fantastic. I will send all of you if I have your email. I believe, Elena, if I don't have your email, you can drop it in the chat. And Tuesdays and now Saturdays, we just added Saturday for our weekly Q&A. We do retreat specific Q&A. So a little bit less about like the brain science, a little bit less about the specifics, but we do just a straight up Q&A where it's either myself or Shandy, who's my operations director, who's been with us for 2 years. Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific, Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, every week. And so if you're looking around for different modalities, different ways to use psilocybin, maybe you're considering a retreat. I think most of the retreat centers do have kind of like a weekly Q&A with one of their leaders. And, you know, this is something I'll say to everyone. You know when you know, and when you feel the call toward this medicine, it will be something profound that starts to happen in your life that you can't explain. And it happened to me back 10 years ago when I was atheist materialist. I just like did not believe in anything other than the material world. I'm still a skeptic, but like I now have at least opened my mind to possibilities more than I used to. But when I first felt this calling toward, it was ayahuasca at the time, it didn't make any sense to me, but it was like I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was popping up everywhere. And it was just, I felt a draw. And so people always ask me, when am I ready? I was like, well, when you're ready, you're ready. Like, you'll know it. You'll feel that it's the time. You still may be very nervous and very scared and just like, this might, I don't know. I have so many questions, but there'll still be that draw. And so when you feel it, you feel it. Mushrooms, in my opinion, are extremely profound teachers, and the safest physiologically, psychologically, I believe, as far as the plant and fungi medicines available. Ketamine, I don't really consider a psychedelic. MDMA is fantastic, but it's not really a psychedelic. Ayahuasca, San Pedro, peyote, all fantastic. A little bit more challenging to navigate those and a little bit more challenging on the body and contraindications, but mushrooms grow all over the world. I believe that they're this like the most beautiful medicine from this planet to humans. We've co-evolved with them. We have more in common in our DNA with mushrooms than mushrooms do to plants. So mushrooms are not plants. If anything, mushrooms are people. They're us. And this journey is inexplainable and magical and profound. And it's my great honor that somehow in my life path that this was where I was meant to be. And if you're looking for a space or a retreat or a person or anything, please, please, please do your research on the human beings that are working there, their foundations, their beliefs, how they're going to hold space, what they're going to be doing. Because unfortunately, like many industries or many organizations in this world, not everyone is in it for the right reasons. So ask as many questions of the leaders as you feel necessary to really feel confident that they're going to not just keep you safe, but also just hold you in this very delicate emotional state in the right way. Because there's no way for me to explain this on a website, but for those of you that have done mushrooms, you know that it can be going to places internally and emotionally that you have never been. And you're going to want people around you that are prepared for that and hold you delicately in that space and lovingly, because you're very vulnerable in those places. So please, please, please do your research, trust yourself, trust your body. Thank you for being here with me today. And I will see you guys all in the multiverse, in the mushroom verse, hopefully. Thank you.